Join us March 23rd and 24th for the 2019 Meet the Masters of Income Property.
Let's break this down and look at some of the strengths of income property as an asset class.
I found that this event is really helpful because I'm totally a newbie to real estate investment, and so I picked up so much information.
One of the great things about it is that it's so fragmented, right? Embrace the fragmentation.
I've actually been learning a lot about tax benefits to real estate, and I've been investing actually well over 10 years now, and I learned a lot of new things today.
The other advantage of this weekend is networking. Meeting new property managers, meeting new area specialists, and seeing the product they have to offer. That changes year by year.
Register now at jasonhartman.com/masters.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Commercial Investing Show, where we analyze, explain, and exploit the opportunities presented in today's commercial property marketplace. If you're interested in apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage facilities, and other income property, you've come to the right place. We'll explore what's hot and what's not in markets nationwide in the relentless pursuit of return on investment. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
It's my pleasure to welcome Rohit Talwar to the show. He is a futurist, a global futurist, and founder of Fast Future Publishing. He works with global businesses to help them understand and create the future. He's an award-winning speaker and noted for his provocative content. His latest book is entitled A Very Human Future. He also has a few others, including The Future of Business. Let's dive into some fascinating conversation today. Rohit, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, and thank you for having me on the show.
Pleasure is all mine. Are you coming to us from London?
Yes, in London, which is very cold and dark this afternoon.
Yeah, well, that's London weather for you. Greetings from sunny Florida, in my case. So sorry if I make you envious there. When we look at some of these issues about the future, I think a fundamental question that I'd like to start with is that the concept of value, what creates value in an economy, is a changing, shifting thing, isn't it? Because when we look at what will be the opportunities of the future, first we need to examine what is value, maybe defining it, understanding how it's changing, etc.
Absolutely right. And I think there are so many different perspectives on value as well, depending on where you're coming from. Right now, there's a philosophy, if you like, in investment markets, that if your company is investing in technology, then you're definitely creating value for the future. But what we can see is that there isn't a totally direct correlation between firms' investment in technology and their performance in the future. So that I think it's much more about, are you investing in the ideas, the business models, the processes that will, in a sense, create value for your end customers in the future? Can you show that what you're creating will stand out? And we're seeing this right now. We're seeing in retail, we're seeing in financial services that a lot of what we thought was future-proofed investment is actually turning out to be not that effective. We're seeing, around the world, retailers closing at a rapid pace. We're seeing financial services firms saying they're seeing no growth or a shrinkage in revenues. And this is largely down to the fact that they haven't really thought about how to align what they're doing with what really enhances the life of customers, which might mean doing it cheaper, doing it faster, providing a better service, taking away the pain from me. And then I think the final one that I want to talk about for today is this sense that the technology players themselves have found that by being present in everyone else's activity, they're pulling away from the pack in terms of value creation, particularly in terms of share price appreciation. So you see the big five, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook are worth more than any other company on the planet. And largely that's because they're now present in everything everyone else does, whether you're listening to the radio, watching TV, having a conversation with someone, performing a business transaction, making a purchase, you're touching one of those companies.
Would you call that maybe the platform concept? I mean, in essence, they're platforms. Amazon provides web services. They provide stores. They do so much. It's mind-boggling. Apple, same way, right? They're present in all of these different things, and technology has allowed them to scale so nicely into those areas, right?
Platform is part of it. I think the other part is mindset. They've managed to, if you like, impregnate themselves into everyone's mindsets that saying, well, we really need to be working with one of your products or buying one of your products or using one of your services, whether it's brand quality, whether it's product quality, whether it's just ubiquity that everyone's using it. There's this sense that we need to be working with their products. And now with the rise of AI, they're going to be penetrating even further. So the game has changed. In the past, we had railroads, we had banks as the leading businesses in society, but they weren't necessarily present in what everyone did. These players now are literally all pervasive. Mm-hmm. And I think because we've never seen that before, we don't know how it will play out. Mm-hmm. But what we can expect is governments trying to break them up. We can expect other financial players deliberately trying to derail them because they don't want one single dominant player in each of the sectors that these guys dominate. So I think that they're central to value creation today, certainly in terms of share price appreciation. It isn't definite that they're creating end value for all the customers they work with, but certainly the markets are treating them that way. And then the markets tend to over-exaggerate any move in share price up or down when they get any kind of information. That shows just how relevant these companies are, how central they are to trade and commerce today.
Yeah. I mean, that is really creating a concentration of wealth, isn't it? Is it a winner-take-all society? I interviewed the author of that book quite a while back, and I like the title. I didn't think the interview was that great, but it was on the show before. But is that what we're facing with this kind of thing where, since they can touch every area of life, they have the platform, they have the scalability, nobody's going to compete with these companies, are they? Or maybe they will. We can be surprised sometimes, right?
Well, right now, there's a feeling that winner is taking almost all, and certainly in terms of the shareholders in these companies doing incredibly well on the back of these companies and the executives. And there's a sense that they might be pulling away from the pack. There are some Chinese companies that are, obviously snapping at their heels, but a very similar model. And then there's the regulators, certainly in the European Union, trying everything they can to break these companies up, to break up their power and to really challenge them. And a desire to see other companies step into the same space and challenge for the provision of those services. One big hope for many is that we'll see a new era of blockchain-based open businesses with different models that really challenge the likes of Google and Facebook in particular. That's to be seen. There's certainly a lot of activity in those spaces, some very interesting ventures coming through, some very different business models. So we could see the power of these businesses challenged. And obviously history has shown us that whenever an empire rises, there are a lot of forces come together to try and bring that empire down, whether it's deliberate or inadvertent. So You're constantly hearing people say, in 10 years, there could be 10 Amazons. Who knows? I think that it will take a lot of skill, a lot of clever marketing, and a lot of support for new businesses to come up and truly rival those, certainly Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, and Microsoft. Facebook, I think, is more at the whim of the consumer. If we all stop using it tomorrow, its business model wouldn't survive. Whereas the others, it's unlikely we'd stop using them just because of how deeply they've penetrated our lives.
Yeah. Well, and Facebook and Google especially, I think, have breached trust so many times. I think with those two companies, most specifically, I'm actually in favor of the regulators for a change. I usually find myself on the opposite side of the government, but this time I want to see one of three things, and I've said it many times before. These companies are so ubiquitous that they either need to be broken up under antitrust, or they need to make their algorithms public and open source so everybody knows why we see the results we see when we search something, or they need to be regulated like utilities. I mean, the fact that they can censor people, that it just really concerns me. These companies are bigger than many governments. Why shouldn't they be treated like a utility? One of those three things has to happen. Maybe all of them. I don't know. Maybe you would disagree.
There are different views on this, aren't there? One is these are now the axis of evil, if you like. These companies know what they're doing. They're very deliberate about it, and they're making as much money as they possibly can through the surveillance economy, having our data, monitoring our lives, manipulating our lives. There's a second view that says they're slightly more tactical than that. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they're trying to maximize their return for as long as they can. The third is, no, they're misunderstood. They're just trying to do a good job, and every now and then they make a mistake. But really, they're there to benefit the whole of humanity, and we need to cut them some slack. And then there's a fourth view, is they're just incompetent and that they don't know what they're doing. They're so big now that you've got lots of relatively young people with less experience of the world and less understanding, if you like, of public morals, who are just working on their individual projects that turn out to invade privacy or whatever. Every day I kind of flip between all four as to what they are.
Fair enough.
But I think ultimately you will need some regulation from regulators who understand what they do. And that's the worrying thing.
Yeah, right.
We're surrounded by incompetent, if you like, politicians who haven't invested the time and effort to truly understand the forces shaping the world, how the global economy works.
They're sort of like the academics in the ivory towers. They don't get it a lot of times. So yeah, I certainly agree.
It's so important that, I think they have to sit back and really understand these technologies and how powerful they are and how much potential they have for good, but also how they can be misapplied. And only then can you do truly smart regulation.
Absolutely. Most of our listeners are investors. The vast majority of them are investing, and a lot of them are investing in things like real estate, particularly. They own businesses and so forth too. But let's take this and maybe shift it into the economy a little bit, to the broader economy, the U.S. economy, the world economy. What does the future look like? In your book, Anticipating 2025, right? It's right around the corner. I mean, everything is changing so quickly. Self-driving car technology is going to change the real estate game. Just all of these shifts, the biohacks and the possibility of tremendously extended longevity, not only lifespan, but health span. These things have huge implications for the broader economy. I mean, what will be the retirement age? How long should people collect the equivalent of Social Security? What do you make of all this? There's just so much to digest. It's mind-boggling.
There is, and I think you have to split this really into three time frames. One is the sort of far future, the 5+ year horizon. And let's call it far future because the world will just change so much in that time frame that any investment in something for that time frame really is purely speculative. Then there's the near term, if you like, the next 12 to 18 months, where we wouldn't even pretend to give advice. That's, usual rules apply about how to invest for the near term. The most interesting piece that we're talking to investors about right now is that 18 months to 5-year window, where we're going to see some truly disruptive change coming that will reshape markets, will reshape the way businesses operate, will reshape business models, reshape value chains. And for us, at the core of that, what you can latch into if you're doing your analysis is this idea of exponential thinking. People who are doubling or more the performance of whatever they're delivering. And you see three types of exponential thinking, really. One is the people who are coming up with exponentially different ways of doing business. So you're seeing these construction companies like Broad Group in China building these 57-story buildings in 19 days. Turn the model on its head of how you do construction. They prefabricate in the factory. They put it together on site like Lego, and they manage the whole process with AI.
Rohit, I've been studying some of these advanced construction technologies, especially 3D printing, but
right.
I did not know that they built a 57-story building in how much time?
19 days.
Like built for occupancy in 19 days? Were people actually moving in?
They built lots of these. Just check out Broad Group in China. They're among the leaders in this whole rapid construction thing. But it's not just rapid construction. You're seeing 3D printing in construction, but you're seeing 3D printing of cars in the automotive world, bringing an exponential improvement in terms of the speed of design, the speed of manufacture, and dramatically dropping the number of cars you need to produce per factory. So as a general principle, it's looking at the sectors where the operating model can be enhanced exponentially. The second is where people are looking to bring about an exponential improvement in the value delivery to customers. And quite often that's either in speed or in price. So they're bringing technology to bear. And you're now seeing people like Western Union, who used to charge you 8 or 9% for a money transfer, doing it for free. And that's because internally they've gone through a process of radically rethinking the way they do things, relying on technology much more, taking people out of the process and slamming down the timeframes and the cost of delivery. And then the final one is where people are coming up with exponentially different business models for how they do business. So the results are exponentially different. And you've seen that for a little while now, where people like Rolls-Royce don't sell you an engine anymore. You basically rent maintenance from them. The revenues have been improved dramatically because of that.
Through the subscription model, right? The SaaS model, and then in the future, we'll call it the CaaS model, car as a service, right?
Yeah, it's where people have taken the traditional business model and just said, here's a totally different way of delivering that service to you. So vehicles on demand, we're starting to see those models work now. And, power on demand, lighting on demand from Philips, where people are only charging the end customer, if you like, a fee for usage or a different way of charging for the service that seems to benefit the end customer because they're moving from, lumpy purchase costs to rental costs or whatever. And for the organization, it means we're getting a more continuous flow of revenues. And then you've got the sort of new entrants who are just bringing a different way of thinking. So if you take someone like the insurance company Trove, what they're doing is they're applying the model from websites like Tinder or apps like Tinder and Bumble, where you swipe right if you like someone and swipe left if you don't. They're applying the same model to charging you for insurance. So when you take your watch out of the safe or the cupboard to wear it, because it's such an expensive piece, you swipe right to start insurance. As soon as you put it back, you swipe left to stop.
But it can still be destroyed in the safe, obviously. But you do this with your own safe? I mean,
your own safe, or it could be you've got it in her. If it's expensive enough, it might be in a vault somewhere. But it's basically you decide when you swipe right to start insuring something, and when you swipe left to stop. Instead of having a just-in-case insurance policy, I now have a just-in-time one where I only pay where I need the service.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And you're seeing this happen with the rise of these so-called decentralized autonomous organizations. So you might have seen Teambrella in insurance, where instead of charging you a premium, they're charging you a tiny transaction fee. You put your money in, you join a pool with other people. If someone has a claim, you collectively in that pool agree what you think their claim is worth. And at the end of the year, if there's any money left in your pot, you get it back. So we're seeing
but wouldn't the incentive with that be for everybody to say, oh, nobody else's claim is worth anything, so there's more in the pot? I mean, they must have figured out a way to work around that. But you're saying that in healthcare,
let's say you lost your bicycle.
Yeah.
It's in my interest to agree a reasonable price for the replacement of your bicycle. Because if I don't, then when it comes to my bicycle being stolen, you're not going to support me.
Yeah.
The other thing is, because we're in a pool, and there's only 50 of us, I think, in the pool, I'm incentivized to say, well, actually, I know a local bike dealer. Let me see if I can get your bike from him.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we're making these kind of bringing social features into these new business models.
Yeah. And, the incentive is, look, if you think long-term enough, you don't want the person with the claim to quit next year and leave the pool because you need their premium, right? Now, this is happening in healthcare in the U.S. with things like Liberty Share and MediShare, and these aren't really insurance programs, they're health share programs.
Right.
They seem to be working pretty well. I don't know, the jury's out, but from what I hear good things.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, you have to invest in these sorts of things for the longer term. with a lot of these players really only coming to market in the last 12 months or in the next 12 months, you can't be investing in them expecting them to be delivering you great returns between now and the next 18 months. But longer term, as they build up traction, suddenly these businesses start to throw off a huge amount of cash.
Sure.
And it's this classic thing that, only a few players do survive in any sector. So it's winner takes almost all at the moment. And the ones that kind of make their way through then generate supernormal returns because they've built the infrastructure, they've built the networks of suppliers, of customers, and then everything really starts to pay back in quite a significant way.
Yeah, okay. When we look at the broader economy, which is where I was going with this, with all of these incredible efficiencies and this new thinking about business models, this new thinking about from where does value really come? The famous saying we've all heard is about the railroads, right? They thought they were in the railroad business when really they were in the transportation business. Had they realized that sooner, they'd still be around, right? Is the future more prosperous? Is it inflationary? Is it deflationary? What does the future look like for, that average person? Are they going to be better off or worse off? Because a fair part of this discussion it has to be is, will the robots and will AI take everybody's job? This is sort of a whole nother angle on this.
So there's a separate conversation about the impact of these disruptive technologies on job creation and on wealth. And right now we don't know. There's a lot of great jobs being created for educated people who have some sort of tech background to work in AI and data science and blockchain. So there's an explosion. But if you're being replaced as a lawyer, as a shop assistant, as a check-in clerk at an airline, then it's unlikely that you're going to walk straight into one of those jobs doing data analytics in an AI firm. You might retrain for it. So what we could see is a distortion, that some people do very well, that the highly skilled people moving into those sectors could do extraordinarily well, and an awful lot of people who were used to having a good living will struggle for a while the economy recorrects. We'll probably need something like guaranteed basic incomes, guaranteed basic services to see people over the hump, but we'll probably have to tie that to an accelerated retraining program to move people up the value chain. If we do that, then longer term things look reasonably rosy for most people. If we don't address the education and skills issue, then we're in deep doo-doo.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, because the skeptic in me says, well, how are you going to train the person who had that job in a restaurant that's now been automated, or that had that job as any type of driver, whether it be a Lyft or Uber driver or a FedEx driver or whatever, truck driver, that's now been automated out of the job? They're not going to become, an AI programmer, right?
Well, a proportion will, because the technology is getting easier to train people to do things with it. But for the majority, I'd say, of your drivers, then they're not. But we're going to have them learn new skills that have them either create their own job, because there will be new businesses created, or to work in other new industries where we won't necessarily need the heavy lifting jobs, but we'll need people still. Mm-hmm. And that's where we need to really go through an accelerated learning process that isn't based on their past, but based still on their potential. And you see accelerated learning programs do tremendous things. And we need to be teaching them skills like collaboration, problem solving, design thinking, scenario thinking, the skills that will allow them to move from job to job. And what we need to do is get over ourselves. We tend to not pay enough attention to the experiments that work and try and recreate them or create new ones. So if you look at places like, Bidwell Training Centre, Manchester Craftsman's Guild, Pittsburgh, for years now, they've demonstrated how to take, unemployed steel workers, illiterate single parents, and retrain them by building faith in themselves first and then giving them the skills so they can go out and work for Dow Chemical as a development chemist.
That's pretty inspiring. Yeah, very inspiring. You didn't even mention one other thing, is that the biohacking that is likely to take place in the future that will literally accelerate learning, all of this stuff we're learning about the body and the mind, that is going to be amazing, right? We may be able to take people and literally make them a lot smarter, right?
I'm pausing there because
Maybe not.
there's a lot of investment going into this whole area of human enhancement, biohacking, human augmentation, whatever you want to call it. And we know that with certain drugs already, nootropic drugs like Ritalin, Adderall, modafinil, that are meant for sleep disorder and attention deficit disorder.
Those have consequences, though.
But they can enhance mental performance, but they have consequences.
Yeah, definitely.
Similarly with the electronic stimulation techniques, everything we're talking about, the neural lace to put sensors into your brains, all those things, they're either unproven, as to their genuine long-term functionality, and they're certainly unproven as to their consequences.
Right.
And so what we don't know is whether this idea of hacking our brains is really going to work long term, or are we going to do irreparable damage?
Fair enough,
society?
but that's only the drug discussion, obviously. And those drugs, I'm no fan of pharmaceutical drugs. Believe me, I'm a huge detractor from that world. But things like functional MRIs, right? Who knows what that will lead to, right? The amazing, we can literally read minds now almost. We're almost at mind reading stage.
We're over-egging the pudding in terms of what we can read in terms of people's brains. But we are making progress, which is great. That's the good thing. But again, the ability to read someone's mind isn't necessarily going to make them more productive.
I know. I'm just saying if we can do what we can do, there's going to be just who knows what's going to come out of that. That's all I'm saying.
I can hack my body to make myself stronger, to run faster, and those things. But then the question will be, will you choose me as an employee, or will you choose a robot that doesn't get angry, that doesn't have days off? So actually, some of the areas where the body hacking could really enhance humans are areas where humans might not need to apply in the future. So
very true. Yeah.
I think we need to give the brain science a chance to see if it can really work to enhance mental capacity. And that would be a really brilliant thing. If I could upload into someone's brain the knowledge of how to code, an AI application.
It'd be amazing. Yeah.
And they'd previously been an Uber driver, that would be fantastic. But we're a ways off that.
Yeah, no question. Let's wrap it up with the future. Is the future optimistic? Everybody wants to be an optimist, right? But is the standard of living going to just get dramatically better in the future? Or with all the stuff that's going on in the economy and the debt problems and the derivative bubble and, all of that stuff, which may not be directly your area, I understand. How do you feel about the future? Give us your take.
So my feel is it's not an either or. It's not good or bad. The reality is we have a really optimistic future in front of us where people could have a better living life, a living standard, where communities are more connected, where we're doing less damage to the planet, we have less toxic politics, and the financial system is genuinely there to serve the economy. However, in order to get there, we have to change a few things. One is the level of education across society needs to be ramped up massively so that people can make better choices. We need to change the whole way in which we recruit politicians. We need to have them go through some real training in how the world works before they're allowed to take their seat, in Parliament, in Congress.
You'll get 100% agreement on that one, Rohit.
But you watch now. We're watching this slow motion car crash in the UK called Brexit,
right.
And what we see is that largely it's a failure of competence, that people don't know how to deal with things, how to create workable solutions, how to bring people together, how to do things on the basis of where the world is moving to. And so you end up with the nightmares we have. If we change that, then we can use our resources more effectively. We can put in far better governance. We can have much smarter solutions to avoid overshoots on anything, whether it's debt or the workings of certain derivatives. We can put far more enlightened mechanisms in to control that. And the big thing, I think, is around regulation of industries. What will destroy us is industries that run rampant. And the best way of doing that regulation has to be to bring players from the industry in to work with the regulators and technology to create really viable solutions and have the members of the industry, effectively pay up on fines or whatever if they go outside the bounds of the industry, but have far smarter technology tracking whether they're doing that. And then we keep everyone within bounds and we move along nicely. We need to make sure we're making the investment in the industries of the future at the R&D level and at the sort of venture creation level. We talked about skilling, and we would need to look at, the role of media in all of this. How do we engage the media in having healthy public conversations about a brighter future where everyone participates.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Give out your website and information about your books.
So the latest book is called A Very Human Future, which is all about how do we enrich humanity in a digitized world. We have 3 others out called The Future of Business, The Future Reimagined, and one about artificial intelligence, which is called Beyond Genuine Stupidity. And you can find all these books and more about us and the work we do and the speaking and consulting we do at fastfuture.com.
Well, that's very interesting. I think the future is a fascinating topic. I've always loved it ever since, the 80s when I started following John Nesbitt's work in megatrends and so forth. And you were probably doing the same back then, I assume. As Yogi Berra said, the future ain't what it used to be. No question about that. It's an amazing time to be alive. Rohit, thank you for joining us today. Fascinating discussion.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.